The espresso machine was making that grinding noise again, the one that sounded like my marriage slowly fading. Midnight in our downtown condo, rain streaking the floor-to-ceiling windows, and I was standing in my kitchen in boxer shorts trying to fix something that was probably beyond repair. Story of my life, really. He'll confess tonight, and I'll reject him right in front of everyone, while he pays. The voice drifted from the living room, my wife Marisol, on FaceTime with someone, her voice carrying that particular brand of cruelty she'd perfected over our 12 years together. I froze, wrench in hand, as her laughter followed. I mean, can you imagine? Gideon actually thinking he deserves an explanation? The man hasn't touched me in 2 years, Serena. 2 years, and now he wants to work on us. More laughter. God, men are so pathetic when they're desperate. Apparently, I was starring in my own Greek tragedy, and nobody had sent me the script. I set the wrench down carefully, my hands steadier than they had any right to be. 36 years old, senior associate at Morrison, Blake & Associates, and I was eavesdropping on my own wife like some suburban cliché. But something about her tone, that particular mix of venom and glee, made my skin crawl. The charity gala is perfect, she continued. He'll make some grand gesture, probably get down on one knee with that stupid anniversary ring he's been hiding in his sock drawer. Yes, Serena, I found it weeks ago, and when he does, I'll tell him exactly what I think of his pathetic attempts to save our marriage. I moved closer to the living room archway, staying in the shadows. Marisol was sprawled across our white leather couch, the one that cost more than my first car, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, designer pajamas that probably cost more than most people's rent. Even at midnight, she looked camera-ready. Had to, really, considering her job as a social media strategist for high-end brands. The best part? She was grinning at her phone screen. He's paying for the whole event, $15,000 for a table, plus my dress, plus the donation he thinks will impress everyone. He's literally funding his own humiliation. My chest tightened, but not with hurt, with something colder, sharper. I'd felt this before, in depositions when opposing counsel thought they had me cornered, right before I destroyed their case with evidence they didn't know I had. Rafe will be there too, Marisol continued, and there it was, the name I'd been waiting to hear. Rafael Ortega, CEO of some tech startup, all flash and borrowed money. I'd met him at 3 different events in the past month, and each time Marisol had found excuses to linger near him, laugh at his mediocre jokes, touch his arm when she spoke. Has he decided what he's telling his wife? The voice on the phone asked. Serena Tran, Marisol's business partner and apparent confidant in adultery. Elena's flying to Seattle that morning for her sister's wedding. Perfect timing. Marisol's smile turned predatory. Rafe and I can be as obvious as we want. Let Gideon see exactly what he's losing. I backed away from the archway, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors. In my home office, I closed the door and sat behind my desk, staring at the wall of law books that had once made me feel accomplished. Now they just looked like expensive props in someone else's play. The smart thing would be to confront her, demand explanations, suggest counseling, try to salvage whatever was left. That's what the old Gideon would have done, the one who still believed in fairness, in fighting clean, in giving people the benefit of the doubt. But the old Gideon hadn't heard his wife planning his public humiliation for sport. I opened my laptop and started typing. The Morrison, Blake & Associates offices occupied 3 floors of downtown's most prestigious building, all glass and steel, and the kind of understated wealth that whispered rather than shouted. I'd been there for 8 years, working my way up from junior associate to senior, handling corporate mergers and high-stakes litigation for clients who measured success in millions. You look like hell, Bobby Dre observed, as I settled into my office Monday morning. She was 29, sharp as a blade, and the best junior associate I'd ever worked with. Also one of the few people in the building who didn't treat me like a stepping stone to something better. Rough weekend, I said, which was technically true. I'd spent Saturday and Sunday doing reconnaissance on my own marriage, and the results weren't encouraging. Marisol's charity thing is this Friday, right? Bobby perched on the edge of my desk, coffee in hand. You excited about playing the supportive husband in front of half the city? Thrilled! I pulled up the guest list on my computer. 200 of the city's most influential people, all gathered to raise money for literacy programs while gossiping about each other's personal lives. Perfect venue for a public execution. Actually, I need a favor. Shoot. I need you to run a background check. Discreetly. Her eyebrows rose. Work-related? Personal. Rafael Ortega, CEO of TechFlow Solutions. I want to know everything. Finances, business dealings, personal relationships, parking tickets, everything. Bobby studied my face for a long moment. This about Marisol? This is about due diligence. Gideon. Her voice softened. If you think she's... I don't think anything. I'm gathering information. Can you do it or not? She nodded slowly. Give me 48 hours. After she left, I spent the morning reviewing contracts and pretending to care about corporate liability clauses. But my mind kept drifting to the previous night's phone call, to Marisol's casual cruelty, to the way she'd laughed about my desperation. The thing about being a lawyer, a good one, is that you learn to think several moves ahead. You don't just react to what's happening, you anticipate what's coming and prepare accordingly. You gather evidence, build your case, and strike when your opponent least expects it. My phone buzzed with a text from Marisol. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. I stared at the message for a full minute before responding. No problem. Love you. The lie came easily. I'd been practicing. That evening, I drove to Skyline, the trendy rooftop bar where Marisol claimed to be meeting potential clients. I parked across the street and waited, feeling ridiculous and vindicated in equal measure. This was either the most paranoid thing I'd ever done or the smartest. She arrived at 8:30, but she wasn't alone. Rafe Ortega climbed out of the passenger seat of her BMW, his hand resting possessively on her lower back as they walked toward the entrance. He was tall, expensively dressed, with the kind of confident swagger that came from never having to earn anything the hard way. I gave them 10 minutes, then followed. Skyline was all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of place where 20-somethings paid $18 for cocktails and posted pictures of their food. I found a corner table with a clear view of the bar, ordered a beer I didn't want, and watched my wife flirt with another man. They weren't being subtle. Marisol's hand kept finding its way to Rafe's thigh. He whispered in her ear, making her laugh in that throaty way that used to be reserved for me. When he stepped outside to take a phone call, she actually took a selfie with his abandoned drink, posting it to her Instagram story with the caption, "Late Night Strategy Sessions." The audacity was almost impressive. I was preparing to leave when Serena appeared, sliding into the booth across from them like she'd been expected. The three of them huddled together, heads close, voices low. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language told the story. Conspirators planning something, sharing secrets, building alliances. When Rafe leaned over and kissed my wife full on the mouth, I didn't feel the rage I'd expected. Instead, I felt something colder, more calculating. I pulled out my phone and started recording. They broke apart, laughing, and that's when Serena noticed me. Her eyes widened, and she grabbed Marisol's arm, whispering urgently. My wife turned, scanning the crowd until her gaze found mine. For a moment we stared at each other across the crowded bar. Then I raised my beer in a mock toast, smiled, and walked out. By the time I got home, Marisol was already there, pacing in our living room like a caged animal. "What the hell were you doing at Skyline?" she demanded. "Having a drink," I said mildly, hanging my coat in the closet. "Nice place, good atmosphere, interesting clientele." "You were spying on me. I was having a beer. You were putting on a show." I turned to face her, keeping my expression neutral. How's the literacy campaign coming along? Raise much money tonight? Her face flushed. It was a strategy meeting. Is that what we're calling it? Don't. Her voice turned dangerous. Don't you dare stand there and act like the victim. You want to know why I was with Rafe? Because he actually pays attention to me. He listens when I talk. He makes me feel like a woman instead of a business arrangement. How long? I asked quietly. What? How long have you been sleeping with him? She lifted her chin defiantly. 3 months. And Serena's been helping you cover it up. Serena's been helping me figure out what I want from my life, which apparently doesn't include a husband who's more interested in his legal briefs than his wife. I nodded slowly, as if considering this. You know what the funny thing is, Marisol? I actually came home tonight planning to suggest counseling. I thought maybe we could work things out, find our way back to each other. Something flickered in her eyes, guilt, maybe, or regret. But it passed quickly. It's too late for that, she said. We're done, Gideon. We have been for a long time. I just didn't know how to tell you. Well, I said, walking toward the stairs. Now I know. I paused at the bottom step, looking back at her. She stood in the middle of our expensive living room, surrounded by all the trappings of our successful life, looking small and uncertain for the first time in months. Oh, and Marisol? Next time you want to plan my public humiliation, you might want to make sure I'm not listening. Her face went white. I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, closed the door, and started planning my response. Bobby's research was thorough and devastating. She handed me the file Wednesday morning with the kind of grim satisfaction that came from a job well done. Your boy Rafe is living on borrowed time, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. TechFlow Solutions is hemorrhaging money. They've got maybe 6 months before bankruptcy, and that's if they can secure another round of funding. I flipped through the pages. Financial records, SEC filings, credit reports. How bad? Bad. He's personally guaranteed most of the company's debt. If TechFlow goes under, he loses everything. The penthouse, the Tesla, probably his marriage too. Elena Ortega comes from old money, and her family's not known for supporting lost causes. Interesting. I made a note in the margin. What about his relationship with Marisol? Any public records? Hotel receipts, restaurant charges, jewelry purchases, all on the company credit card, which means it's all going to come out when the bankruptcy proceedings start. Guy's not just cheating on his wife, he's using investor money to fund his affair. And Serena? Bobby's expression darkened. That's where it gets complicated. Serena Tran isn't just Marisol's business partner. She's also TechFlow's marketing consultant, pulling down a 6-figure contract for brand development and social media strategy. Basically, Marisol and Serena are both on Rafe's payroll. I leaned back in my chair, processing this. So when TechFlow collapses, they all go down together. Unless they find another source of income, Bobby met my eyes, like a generous divorce settlement. The pieces clicked into place with satisfying precision. This wasn't just about an affair, it was about money. Marisol wasn't leaving me for love, she was leaving me for survival, with Serena pulling the strings and Rafe providing the excuse. There's something else, Bobby continued. I did some digging into Serena's background. Turns out she and I have a history. What kind of history? She used to work here. 5 years ago, junior associate lasted about 8 months before you had her fired for falsifying billing records. I stared at her. I don't remember anyone named Serena Tran. She was Serena Walsh back then. Married name. Bobby pulled out another file. She blamed you specifically for destroying her legal career, said you were vindictive and biased, and tried to sue the firm for wrongful termination. Case was dismissed, but she held a grudge. So this is revenge. This is chess, and you've been playing checkers. Bobby leaned forward. She orchestrated the whole thing, introduced Marisol to Rafe, encouraged the affair, Probably even suggested the charity gala as the perfect venue for your humiliation. She's been planning this for years. I felt that familiar cold rage building in my chest, but this time it was accompanied by something else: respect. Serena had played a long game, building relationships, positioning pieces, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. It was exactly what I would have done. "What's your plan?" Bobby asked. I closed the files and looked out my office window at the city below, all those people going about their lives, unaware that their entertainment for Friday night was going to be a public execution disguised as charity. "I'm going to give them exactly what they want," I said finally. "Which is?" "A show." That afternoon, I called Emily, my 16-year-old daughter from my first marriage. She lived with her mother in Chicago but visited every few months, and she had the kind of social media savvy that made adults feel ancient. "Dad, this is weird. You never call during school hours." "I need a favor, sweetheart. It's about Marisol." There was a pause. Emily had never warmed to my second wife, though she'd been diplomatic about it. "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves your TikTok skills and a very public event." "Ooh, drama. I'm listening." I explained what I needed, and Emily's delighted laughter told me everything I needed to know about her feelings toward her stepmother. "Dad, that's absolutely savage." "I love it." "You're sure you can handle the technical side?" "Please, I could do this in my sleep. When do you need it?" "Friday night, the charity gala." "Perfect. I'll fly in Thursday. This is going to be epic." After I hung up, I spent the rest of the afternoon making phone calls to caterers, to the venue coordinator, to the audio-visual team handling the gala's presentation setup. Small changes, minor adjustments, the kind of details that wouldn't be noticed until it was too late. By Thursday evening, everything was in place. Emily had arrived with a suitcase full of equipment and a teenager's enthusiasm for chaos. Bobby had compiled enough evidence to destroy 3 reputations and a business, and I had prepared the kind of presentation that would make my law school professors proud. "You know there's no going back after this," Bobby warned as we reviewed the final details in my office. "There was no going back the moment Marisol decided to humiliate me for sport," I replied. "I'm just changing the script." "And if it backfires?" I thought about my wife's laughter, about Rafe's smug confidence, about Serena's years of patient planning. Then at least I'll go down swinging. Friday morning, Marisol was a bundle of nervous energy, flitting around our condo in her bathrobe, barking orders at stylists and photographers. She'd hired a full team to document her charity work, though I suspected the real purpose was to capture my humiliation for posterity. "You're being unusually calm," she observed, as I adjusted my tie in the bedroom mirror. "It's going to be a memorable night," I agreed. "You've worked hard to make sure of that." She studied my reflection, looking for hidden meanings. "Gideon, about the other night." "Don't." I turned to face her. "We both know where we stand. Let's just get through tonight, with whatever dignity we have left." Something flickered across her face. Doubt, maybe, or second thoughts. But then her phone buzzed with a text, and she was back to her preparations, dismissing me with the casual indifference I'd grown accustomed to. I picked up the small envelope from my dresser, the one I'd been carrying for 3 days, and slipped it into my jacket pocket. The show was about to begin. The Lakeside Event Center was everything Marisol had wanted: elegant, expensive, and impressive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the water, crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables draped in white linen, and 200 of the city's elite mingled with champagne and carefully practiced smiles. I played my part perfectly. The devoted husband, proud of his wife's charitable work, writing checks with appropriate generosity while she held court near the silent auction tables. Marisol looked stunning in a black dress that cost more than most people's monthly salary, her hair swept up to show off the diamond earrings I'd bought her for our anniversary. Rafe arrived fashionably late, making an entrance that drew appreciative glances from the society wives and envious looks from their husbands. He worked the room like a politician, all charm and confident handshakes, eventually making his way to our table. "Gideon, good to see you again." His smile was perfect, practiced. "Marisol's told me so much about tonight. Wonderful cause." "Raphael." I stood to shake his hand, gripping just hard enough to make him wince. "How's business? I hear the tech sector's been challenging lately." A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face. "We're always adapting, staying ahead of the curve." "Of course. Adaptation is survival, isn't it?" Serena appeared at his elbow like a well-trained assistant, her smile bright and empty. "Gideon, you look wonderful tonight. Marisol's so lucky to have such a supportive husband." "Serena," I nodded politely, "I don't think we've been properly introduced. Gideon Hale, Morrison, Blake and Associates." "Oh, I know exactly who you are." Her smile never wavered, but her eyes were cold. "Your reputation precedes you." "Funny, I was thinking the same thing about you." The dinner portion of the evening passed in a blur of small talk and careful positioning. Marisol and Rafe were seated strategically apart, but kept finding excuses to interact. Shared glances, whispered conversations, the kind of obvious flirtation that made our tablemates uncomfortable. I waited until the speeches began. The evening's program included presentations from 3 different literacy organizations, each designed to tug at heartstrings and open wallets. I'd been scheduled to speak last, a brief thank you to the generous donors, and a final plea for support. But as the third speaker concluded, I stood and walked to the podium without waiting for my introduction. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying easily through the sound system Emily had helped me test that afternoon. "Thank you all for being here tonight. Your generosity will make a real difference in our community's future." Polite applause rippled through the room. Marisol looked puzzled but not alarmed. Yet. "Before we conclude, I'd like to share something personal with you all. A story about truth, about loyalty, and about the importance of reading between the lines." I pulled the small envelope from my pocket, holding it up for the room to see. "My wife Marisol has been planning this evening for months. She's put tremendous effort into making sure it would be memorable, that it would give people something to talk about for years to come. And I have to say, she's succeeded beyond her wildest dreams." Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. At our table, Marisol had gone very still, her face pale beneath her carefully applied makeup. You see, Marisol believed that tonight would be the perfect venue for a very public confession. She was right about that, just wrong about who would be doing the confessing. I opened the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "This is a transcript of a phone conversation recorded in my home 6 days ago. The participants were my wife, her business partner Serena Tran, and the subject of their discussion was how to orchestrate my public humiliation while I paid for the privilege." The room had gone completely silent, 200 people leaning forward, sensing vulnerability. But that's just the beginning of the story. I nodded to Emily, who was positioned near the audiovisual controls, because it turns out this whole evening, this affair, this elaborate scheme, it's all been about money. The lights dimmed, and the large screens around the room came to life with a presentation I'd spent 3 days perfecting. Financial records, hotel receipts, SEC filings, all laid out with the precision of a legal brief. "Rafael Ortega's company is bankrupt," I continued as the evidence scrolled past. "Serena Tran has been using my wife to funnel money through fraudulent consulting contracts, and Marisol has been planning to leave me for a man who can't afford his own mistress." Gasps and whispers filled the room. At our table, Rafe had pushed back his chair, looking like he wanted to run. Serena was staring at the screens with the expression of someone watching her life's work crumble in real time. "But here's the really interesting part," I said, advancing to the next slide. "Serena Tran used to work for my law firm. 5 years ago, She was fired for falsifying billing records. This entire scheme, the affair, the humiliation, the financial fraud, it's all been an elaborate revenge plot. The screen now showed Serena's employment records, her lawsuit against the firm, her subsequent career trajectory. The woman herself had gone ashen, her carefully maintained composure finally cracking. So yes, Marisol, you're absolutely right. Tonight is the perfect venue for a confession, just not the one you were expecting. I looked directly at my wife, who was staring at me with a mixture of horror and something that might have been respect. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the real literacy program, learning to read people, to see through their lies, to understand that sometimes the most important education comes from discovering who your real enemies are. The room erupted, voices raised in shock, excitement, indignation. Phones came out as people started recording, sharing, spreading the story to social media feeds and group chats. Within minutes, it would be everywhere. I stepped down from the podium and walked calmly to our table, where Marisol sat frozen in her chair. The envelope, I said quietly, placing it in front of her. Everything's in there, the evidence, the recordings, the financial documents. Consider it my gift to you. After all, you did say you wanted me to pay. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Gideon, don't. I leaned down, speaking softly enough that only she could hear. You wanted to destroy me in public, to humiliate me in front of everyone who matters in this city. You succeeded. The only difference is I'm taking you down with me. I straightened, nodded politely to the rest of the table, and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear the chaos building, raised voices, scraping chairs, the sound of reputations being shredded in real time. Rafe was arguing with someone, probably his wife's family. Serena was shouting into her phone, trying to control damage that was already beyond repair. And Marisol was sitting alone at our table, holding the envelope that contained the wreckage of her carefully planned future. I paused at the door, looking back one last time at the scene I'd orchestrated. 200 people, all talking at once, all sharing the story that would define their conversations for months to come. The aftermath was swift and merciless. By Saturday morning, the story had exploded across social media, local news, and the kind of gossip networks that could destroy reputations overnight. Charity Galagate was trending on Twitter, with videos of my presentation being shared thousands of times. I spent the weekend at a downtown hotel, watching the carnage unfold from a safe distance. Rafe Ortega's company collapsed within 48 hours. Investors pulled out, creditors called in debts, and his wife filed for divorce before the weekend was over. He'd gone from tech entrepreneur to cautionary tale in less than 3 days. Serena Tran's marketing firm lost every client by Monday. Her elaborate revenge plot had backfired spectacularly, destroying not just her business, but any chance she had of rebuilding her career. The legal community was small and unforgiving, and her name was now permanently associated with fraud and deception. Marisol's fall was perhaps the most complete. Her social media accounts, once carefully curated displays of success and influence, became battlegrounds where former friends and business associates distanced themselves from the scandal. Brands canceled contracts, speaking engagements disappeared, and her reputation as a marketing strategist evaporated overnight. But it was Tuesday evening when the real reckoning came. I was back in my office, working late and enjoying the relative quiet when Marisol appeared in my doorway. She looked exhausted, her usual polished appearance replaced by the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in days. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Of course. Though I should mention that Bobby's working late too, so we're not alone." She sat down carefully, as if sudden movements might shatter what was left of her composure. "I deserved what happened Friday night." "Yes, you did. But Gideon, the way you did it, destroying all of us in public like that, it was cruel." I looked up from my computer, studying her face. "Cruel?" Marisol, you spent months planning to humiliate me in front of the same people. The only difference is that I was better at it than you were. I never wanted to hurt you this badly. You wanted to hurt me just enough to feel powerful, just enough to make yourself feel superior. The fact that I turned the tables doesn't make me the villain." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "What happens now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices, just like I've been doing for the past year while you lied to my face and planned my destruction. I mean with us, with the divorce." I saved the document I'd been working on and closed my laptop. "There is no us, Marisol. There hasn't been for a long time. You made that clear. The prenup will be honored exactly as written. You'll get what we agreed you'd get. Nothing more, nothing less. Despite what you might think, I'm not vindictive enough to leave you with nothing." She looked up at me with something that might have been gratitude. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Thank the fact that I still have some principles left, even if you don't." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. Not for leaving you. We both know that was inevitable. But for the way I did it. You didn't deserve that." "No, I didn't. But I deserved the truth, and you couldn't even give me that." After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, looking out at the city lights and thinking about justice, revenge, and the difference between the two. The truth was, I didn't feel satisfied. I felt empty, drained, like someone who'd won a war, but lost everything worth fighting for in the process. Marisol was right about one thing. What I'd done Friday night was cruel. It was also effective, which in my profession often mattered more than kindness. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Dad, you're famous. The video has 2 million views. You're like the internet's favorite savage dad right now." I smiled, despite myself. At least someone was enjoying this. Wednesday brought the final act of the drama. Rafe was arrested for fraud and embezzlement, the FBI having taken a sudden interest in TechFlow's finances after my very public presentation of evidence. Serena was named as a co-conspirator, her dreams of revenge transformed into a nightmare of federal prosecution. And Marisol quietly moved out of our condo, taking only her personal belongings and leaving behind the expensive furniture, artwork, and jewelry that had once defined her sense of self-worth. I came home to an empty apartment that felt larger and lonelier than it had any right to, but it also felt clean, honest, free of the lies and manipulation that had poisoned the air for months. That evening, Bobby stopped by with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. "So," she said, settling onto the couch with her low mane, "how does it feel to be the most talked-about lawyer in the city?" "Exhausting," I admitted. "I've had 3 job offers, 2 book deals, and a request to consult on a Netflix series about revenge plots. And I think I just want to practice law and live quietly for a while." She nodded approvingly. "Probably wise. Though you have to admit it was pretty spectacular. I mean, the way you orchestrated the whole thing, the timing, the evidence, the presentation, it was like watching a masterclass in strategic destruction. It was cruel. It was justice. There's a difference." I thought about that as we ate in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle beyond my windows. Maybe Bobby was right. Maybe what I'd done wasn't cruel but necessary, not revenge but accountability. Or maybe it was both, and the difference mattered less than I wanted to believe. The next morning brought one final surprise. A hand-delivered envelope, expensive paper, my name written in elegant script. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead from one of the city's most prestigious law firms, along with a job offer that made my current salary look like pocket change. The note was brief. "Mr. Hale, we've been following your recent work with great interest. Your presentation of evidence and strategic thinking demonstrate exactly the kind of skills we value. Please consider joining our litigation team. We believe you have a bright future ahead of you." I set the letter aside and smiled. It seemed that destroying 3 people's lives in spectacular fashion was actually good for my career. There was probably a moral lesson in that somewhere, though I wasn't sure I wanted to examine it too closely. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and got back to work. After all, there were other cases to handle, other clients to serve, other battles to fight. And somewhere in the city, 3 people were learning that actions have consequences, that lies have prices, and that sometimes the quiet, underestimated husband turns out to be the most dangerous enemy of all. The envelope sat empty on my desk, having delivered its message with devastating efficiency, just like I'd promised it would. Justice, revenge, or simple accountability. It didn't matter what you called it. What mattered was that the truth had finally been told, the lies had been exposed, and the people who'd tried to destroy me had learned exactly what happened when they underestimated their target. In the end, that was enough. It had to be.